My name is Emily, I'm 33 years old, and for as long as I can remember, I tried to be the perfect daughter, the reliable one, the one who never asked for anything, never caused trouble. That was true, until one Sunday dinner. My parents casually laughed and said my sister would be staying at my place for a while. My hands shook as I stood up and said, "That's funny, I haven't lived there for 6 weeks." The room went silent. My mom's voice cracked. "Wait, then where have you been staying? Before I tell you how my family completely unraveled that night, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. And make sure to subscribe so you can hear the rest of this story, because when my family finally realized the truth, they discovered they never really knew me at all. Growing up, I was always the responsible one. From the moment I could tie my own shoes, my parents expected me to manage on my own. My sister, Chloe, was 3 years younger and treated like fragile glass. When she cried, my parents rushed to comfort her. When I cried, I was told to be strong, to set a good example. "Emily can handle it" became their favorite phrase. School project, Emily can handle it. College applications, Emily can handle it. Building a career and paying rent alone with no help, Emily can handle it. And I did. I worked through college while keeping a 3.9 GPA. I landed an entry-level job at a top marketing firm in Chicago and climbed the ladder for 7 years. I found a small one-bedroom apartment in Lincoln Park, barely affordable, but it was mine. Every rent payment brought pride, but also resentment. Pride, because I had done it all on my own. Resentment, because Chloe lived at home until she was 26, bills covered. And when she finally moved out, my parents even paid part of her condo down payment. "Your sister is more sensitive than you," my mom would say. "You've always been so independent." But independence wasn't my choice. It was the role forced on me since childhood. With no other option. 6 weeks ago, everything changed. My company lost a major client, and layoffs hit. Despite years of loyalty and glowing reviews, I was cut. Last in, first out, they claimed, though it wasn't true. The reality: I hadn't built the right connections. I was too busy working overtime. My severance covered 1 month's rent and some groceries. I started applying for jobs immediately, confident my experience would land me something quickly, but I was wrong. The market was flooded with other marketing professionals. Rejections piled up. My small savings dried up. When rent came due, and I couldn't pay, I faced a choice: ask my family for help, or handle it alone. Like always, pride won. I packed what I could into my Honda Civic, gave up my apartment, and prepared to live in my car until I found work. "It'll just be a week or two," I told myself as I folded clothes neatly into the trunk. I kept my gym memberships so I could shower. I found safe parking spots. I kept my appearance sharp so no one could tell I was homeless. I set up a virtual mailbox for job applications and used library computers for resumes and interviews. And every Sunday, I drove to my parents' house for dinner, just like I always had. I showed up well-dressed, armed with fabricated stories about work and friends. I sat through their endless praise for Chloe's smallest accomplishments while my life was quietly collapsing. The dinners gave me a hot meal and a taste of normalcy, but each time, my anger grew. Not once did they notice the exhaustion in my face. The dark circles makeup couldn't hide, the way I left immediately after dessert. 6 Sundays passed, 6 nights of pretending, 6 nights of being asked, "How's work?" only for the subject to change before I could answer. 6 nights of my father proudly patting Chloe's shoulder while barely acknowledging mine. The resentment built like pressure in a sealed container. Each dismissal, each act of favoritism, each assumption that I was fine because I had always been fine pushed me closer to breaking. I wondered if they'd even notice if I stopped coming altogether, or if they'd just shrugged and say, "That's Emily, always independent." The worst part: knowing that if I told them the truth, they'd probably be disappointed, not supportive. My mom would sigh and say she thought I was more responsible. My dad would give money with a lecture. Chloe would look at me with pity, silently thinking, "I never thought you'd fail." So I kept the secret. I slept in parking lots and rest stops, washed my hair in gym sinks, sent resumes from coffee shops, and every Sunday, I walked into that house pretending everything was fine, but inside, something was breaking. The Emily who always rose to the occasion, who built her entire identity on being the capable one, was falling apart. I wasn't handling a tie, was barely surviving. And no one in my family had the faintest idea. That Sunday began like any other in my new reality. I woke up at 5:30 a.m., sweating as the rising sun turned my car into an oven. I parked behind a 24-hour supermarket, a spot I'd learned was usually quiet and safe from security. I folded my blanket neatly, tucked it under the passenger seat with my pillow, and grabbed my toiletry bag along with a clean outfit from the organized mess in my back seat. At 6 o'clock sharp, when the gym opened, I was already waiting. I showered, brushed my teeth, and applied makeup carefully, determined to look polished even though I had slept in the driver's seat. By 9 o'clock, I was in a coffee shop, laptop open, sending out another wave of job applications. Each cover letter was tailored, each resume adjusted to fit the role. I had perfected this daily routine, though every rejection made the effort feel heavier and more pointless. By 3 o'clock, it was time to prepare for dinner at my parents'. I changed into a nicer outfit inside a public restroom, a dark blue dress my mother always complimented. I stopped at a florist for a small bunch of daisies, not because I wanted to, but because showing up empty-handed never felt right. The drive to the suburbs took 45 minutes, and as always, I timed it perfectly. Arriving at 5 o'clock meant not too early for extra small talk, not too late to be scolded. My mother opened the door, apron dusted with flour. "Oh, you're here," she said, as if my punctuality surprised her. "Chloe just called. She's running 15 minutes late." Of course she was, and of course, it was fine. If I had been 15 minutes late, there would have been endless comments about respecting other people's time. "I made lasagna," my mother added as I followed her inside. "Chloe's favorite for 30 years now. Just once, I wished she would make my favorite, though I doubted she even remembered what it was. For the record, it's chicken pot pie. My father was in the living room, glued to a football game. He grunted a greeting without looking away. I placed the daisies on the coffee table near him. "Those for your mother?" he asked, finally glancing at me. "Yes," I said, though they were for both of them. "Nice," he muttered, already back to the screen. In the kitchen, I helped my mother set the table while she spoke endlessly about Chloe's latest success, assistant manager at the boutique. They're even giving her business cards, real ones with her name. I nodded politely, though I'd had business cards for years in my old job. But I said nothing. It wasn't Chloe's fault. She was doing her best. The problem was that our parents held her achievements higher than mine ever seemed to matter. At 5:20, the doorbell rang. My mother rushed off, abandoning the salad. Seconds later, I heard laughter, my father's, my mother's, Chloe's. She entered the kitchen beaming. "Emily," she said, hugging me quickly, "you look nice. That dress brings out your eyes." She wore jeans and a casual top. I was overdressed again. Always overdressed. Always trying harder than I needed to, and no one noticing. Dinner began, and as always, the spotlights stayed on Chloe. Her promotion, her bad date, her dream of taking a photography class, her frustrations with a customer. I chewed quietly, speaking only when directly addressed. The lasagna was delicious, but it weighed heavy in my stomach, tangled with the anxiety that never seemed to leave me. Then my mother leaned forward during a pause. "Chloe has some news," she said. Chloe looked down. "It's not a big deal, Mom." "Of course it is," my mother insisted, patting her hand. Chloe and Mark broke up. Mark, the boyfriend she had lived with for 8 months. I hadn't heard a word about trouble between them. "I'm sorry," I said automatically. "It's for the best," Chloe shrugged. "But he's keeping the apartment. I need to find a new place." I felt tension rising inside me. My mother picked up the thread. "Which brings us to a little favor, just for a short while, until Chloe finds her own place." My father chimed in. "We thought since you have that spare bedroom." Spare bedroom? In my one-bedroom apartment. Chloe had been there once. Had they all forgotten? "We know it's an imposition," my mother continued, "but family helps family. Just a month or two, in an apartment I no longer had, on a bed that didn't exist. Plus," my father added, "Chloe can help with the rent. That Lincoln Park place isn't cheap." They were still talking about my life as if nothing had changed, as if they knew anything about my reality. The pressure of the last 6 weeks boiled over. 6 weeks of sleeping in my car. 6 weeks of gym showers and coffee shop facades. 6 weeks of pretending while everything crumbled, and not one of them had noticed. I stood up. "Funny," I said, my voice steady. "I haven't lived there in 6 weeks. The laughter stopped instantly. 3 faces turned toward me, confused. "What do you mean?" my father asked. "I lost my job 6 weeks ago. I couldn't afford rent. I had to give up the apartment. The words spilled out, each one lifting a weight off me. My mother's voice shook. Then, where have you been staying? The silence stretched. I looked at each of them, my father's confusion, my mother's horror, Chloe's discomfort. My car, I said finally. I've been living in my car. My mother gasped, hand flying to her chest. In another moment, it might have seemed dramatic, even funny. Not now. That's ridiculous, my father snapped. Why would you do that when you could have just come home? That question lit something inside me. Could I have, really? Because not once, in 10 years, have you made me feel like this was still my home. Not once have you offered me the same support you give Chloe at every turn. That's not fair, my mother protested. We've always supported you both equally. I let out a sharp laugh. Harsher than I expected, Evan. I startled at the sound. Mom, let's be real. You paid Chloe's rent until she was 26. You helped her with the down payment on her condo. You've bailed her out of credit card debt twice that I know of. Meanwhile, I worked through college, took out loans I'm still paying off, and received exactly zero financial help since I turned 18. We helped with your college. Dad jumped in, defensive as always. 1 semester of books. I shot back. 1. I paid for everything else myself. Mom's mascara was running now, tears spilling down her cheeks. Why didn't you tell us you were struggling? We would have helped. Would you? My voice cracked, but I pushed through. Or, would you have lectured me about responsibility and proper planning? Would you have sighed and wondered aloud how I could let this happen? Would you have whispered to your friends about how your responsible daughter turned out to be a disappointment? For the first time, Chloe spoke. Emily, that's not fair. Mom and Dad love you. I turned to her. This isn't about love, Chloe. It's about expectations. Double standards. It's about how I've been treated compared to you. They call you twice a day, but they didn't notice I've been homeless for 6 weeks. 6 weeks. Where do you think I've been showering? Where do you think I've been sleeping? How do you think it feels to sit here every Sunday listening to everyone celebrate your promotion while I lost a career I spent 7 years building? We didn't know, Dad said, softer now. That's the problem. You didn't know because you didn't ask. You didn't know because you've never been interested in my life beyond the surface. You didn't know because it's easier to assume I'll handle everything while you focus all your concern on Chloe. That's not true, Mom sobbed. We've always been proud of you. Proud of what? Exactly. Can you name one accomplishment of mine from the past year? Do you even know my last big project at work? Who my friends are? What I do in my free time? Anything real about my life? The silence was answer enough. Do you remember when I made honor roll every semester in high school? My words poured out like a flood. Chloe brought home 1A, and you took her out for ice cream. I brought home straight A's, and you told me, that's what we expect from you, Emily. Dad shifted uncomfortably. We never meant to make you feel less important. But you did. Every single time you dropped everything for Chloe's school events, but skipped mine because of work. Every time you sat for hours helping her with homework, but told me I was smart enough to figure it out alone. Every time you cheered her on for the smallest achievements while treating mine like they were nothing. My voice cracked, but I couldn't stop. Remember my college graduation? You were an hour late because Chloe had a fender bender. She wasn't hurt, the car had a scratch. But that mattered more than watching me graduate summa cum laude. That's not what happened, Mom whispered weakly. It's exactly what happened. Just like when I announced my promotion at dinner and you changed the subject to Chloe's haircut. Or when I ran a marathon after training for months and you forgot it was even happening. Dad's face reddened. You're exaggerating. We've always treated you both the same. Really. My voice dropped to a whisper. I've been sleeping in my car for 6 weeks. Coming here every Sunday, pretending everything was fine, and none of you noticed. How is that the same? You should have told us. Dad exploded, slamming his fist on the table hard enough to rattle the dishes. How were we supposed to know if you didn't say anything? You've always been independent. You've always handled things yourself. We respected that. It wasn't respect, I said quietly. It was convenience. It was easier to assume I was fine than to actually notice I wasn't. Easier to pour your attention into Chloe, while I did what you taught me handle it myself, never complain. Mom's sobs grew louder. I can't believe you've been living in your car. My daughter, homeless. What will people think? And there it was. Not concern for me but for appearances. That's all you care about, isn't it? What people will think, not the fact that I've been struggling, not that I've been alone through the hardest time of my life, just how it makes you look. That's not what I meant, she backpedaled. It's exactly what you meant. I grabbed my purse and stood. I need some air. Don't you walk out of this house, young lady, Dad barked, his old authority ringing sharp. But not tonight. I'm 33 years old, Dad. I'm not a child you can order around. And this stopped feeling like home a long time ago. I walked out, ignoring their voices calling me back. Out in the driveway, I slid into my car, my only home these past 6 weeks, and finally broke. Sobs tore through me, raw and gut-wrenching. I cried for the little girl who worked so hard to be what her parents wanted. I cried for the woman who lost everything but was too proud to ask for help. I cried for the family dynamic that had led us here. Through the window, I saw them still at the dining table, Mom crying, Dad furious, Chloe staring down at her plate. They were probably already talking about me, about how ungrateful I was, about how I ruined another family dinner, or maybe, just maybe, they were finally seeing the truth. The week that followed was brutal. My phone buzzed nonstop with texts and calls I couldn't answer. What more was there to say? I had finally told them the truth, and their reactions only confirmed what I always suspected. They never really knew me at all. Mom's single quotes as texts swung between guilt and guilt trips. I cried all night thinking about you, in that car. Then, minutes later, call me right now, young lady. Dad left gruff voicemails, ordering me to stop this nonsense and come home. Chloe's messages were gentler, asking if I was safe where I was staying, but I couldn't respond, not yet. Meanwhile, my situation was collapsing. The emotional toll crushed my job search. I couldn't fake a smile in interviews anymore. I showed up late to virtual meetings, too exhausted from another night in the car. Depression seeped in. My carefully kept appearance unraveled. My savings shrank to less than $100, barely enough for gas, food, and my gym membership, my only access to a shower. I started skipping meals, rationing cheap fast food to once a day. I canceled the few streaming subscriptions that had been my only comfort on those long, empty nights. Then 10 days after that dinner, a brutal thunderstorm hit Chicago. I parked in what I thought was a safe spot, but around 2 in the morning, I woke to water seeping into my car. The street had flooded, and water was pushing in through the door seals. Panicked, I started the engine and tried to move to higher ground, but it was too late. The water reached the engine, and the car sputtered before dying completely. I grabbed my laptop, my phone, and a folder with my most important documents, then waded through knee-deep water to the sidewalk. I stood there in the pouring rain, helpless, as the flood swallowed my car, my home, along with nearly everything I owned. My clothes, my toiletries, the family photos I'd saved, all destroyed. I had no one to call, nowhere to go. So I walked, alone, in the rain, in the middle of the night. Eventually, I found an all-night laundromat. I sat in a hard plastic chair, soaked to the bone, clutching my laptop bag to my chest until morning. When the rain stopped, I returned to my car. It was a total loss. Water had risen to the seats, ruining everything. Insurance would cover the car, but not the personal items. And even then, the payout would take weeks' time I didn't have. That entire day, I drifted between coffee shops and libraries, trying to figure out my next move. By evening, exhaustion hit me. I ended up on a park bench. No plan, no shelter, no hope. That's where Officer Mason found me. She was checking the park before closing when she noticed me sitting there, still in damp clothes, staring blankly ahead. Ma'am, the park closes at 9. You'll need to move along, she said, her voice professional but not unkind. I looked up. Something in my face must have alarmed her because her tone softened. Are you all right? Do you need medical help? I shook my head. I'm fine. Just nowhere to go. She sat down beside me, keeping a respectful distance. How long have you been homeless? The word hit me like a punch. Homeless. I'd been living in my car for weeks, but I never let myself use that label. I told myself it was temporary, just between apartments. But now, with no car and no shelter at all, I couldn't deny it. My car flooded last night, I whispered. I'd been living in it for about 7 weeks. Now I have nothing. She nodded, no judgment in her eyes. There's a women's shelter about 20 minutes from here. They might have space. Want me to call? Pride flared inside me, the same pride that kept me from asking for help for so long. I nearly said no, but I was too tired. Tired of carrying everything alone. Yes, I whispered, please. She made the call. They had space. Then she offered me a ride. The shelter was called New Beginnings, a name that felt both hopeful and crushing. Inside, a woman named Lily helped me check in. Her gentle but direct questions chipped away at my defenses. When she asked if I had family to call, I broke down, sobbing as I tried to explain the complicated dynamics that left me feeling I couldn't. Family isn't always what we need in crisis, Lily said, handing me a tissue. Sometimes we need strangers who see us clearly without the baggage. She led me to a small bed in a shared room with 3 other women. It wasn't private, it wasn't luxurious, but it was clean, dry, and safe. She gave me toiletries, a towel, and donated clothes that actually fit. That night, lying on a narrow bed in a room full of strangers, I hit rock bottom. Not because of the shelter, but because I finally faced the truth. I'd fallen farther than I ever thought possible. From a successful marketing professional with an apartment in Lincoln Park, to a homeless woman in a shelter, all because I was too proud to ask for help in the dark. Listening to the quiet sobs and restless breathing of the other women, I confronted the reality I'd avoided for so long. The strong, independent version of me was just a mask. Underneath, I was still that wounded child, still craving approval. Still carrying old hurts. The next morning, I met a social worker named Grace. She helped me apply for emergency assistance, pointed me to job programs, and connected me with resources I never knew existed. You're not the typical client we see here, she said gently. You have education, experience, and skills people need. This is only a setback, not a life sentence. Her words were meant to comfort me, but instead they made me think about the other women in the shelter. Why was my homelessness likely temporary, while for them it might be a life sentence? Was it because of my privilege, my education, my past stability? The thought was humbling. Over the next few days, I met some of them. Maria, who had escaped domestic violence with nothing but her children and the clothes on their backs. Tanya, whose untreated mental illness cost her a job, an apartment, and her support system. And Eleanor, an elderly woman whose fixed income couldn't keep up with rising rents. Their stories put my own situation into perspective. Yes, my family had treated me unfairly. Yes, I had faced bad luck and hardship. But I also had advantages many of them never had in education, work experience, health, and independence. For the first time in my life, I truly understood privilege as an abstract idea, but as a reality I could feel. And with that realization came a responsibility to accept help now, so that, one day, I could offer help to others. My first night in a real bed, after weeks of sleeping in my car, was a mixture of relief and sadness. Relief that I could finally rest without fear, stretch out fully, and feel safe. Sadness at how far I had fallen, and at the uncertainty of when or if I would ever have a home again. But as I drifted to sleep, one thought gave me comfort. At least I wasn't pretending anymore. For better or worse, the truth was out. And maybe that was the first step toward something better. 2 weeks into my stay at New Beginnings, I was in the common area filling out job applications when Lily approached me. Emily, you have a visitor, she said. Startled, I looked up. I hadn't told anyone where I was staying. My first thought was that it might be Officer Mason checking in, as she had before. But when I reached the reception desk, it was Chloe, my sister, looking uncertain and out of place in her designer jeans and cashmere sweater. How did you find me? I asked, too shocked to even greet her. I've been searching everywhere, she said. I called hospitals, checked with the police. Finally, an officer named Mason told me you might be here. She hesitated. Can we talk? Maybe over coffee? Part of me wanted to refuse, to shield myself from more hurt. But there was something in her expression, vulnerability, I rarely saw in my confident younger sister, that made me nod. We walked to a small coffee shop 2 blocks away. After ordering, we sat in silence at a corner table. Finally, Chloe spoke. Mom and Dad don't know I'm here. They think I'm at work. Why the secrecy? I asked. She sighed. Because I wanted to talk to you first, without their drama. They've been a mess since that dinner. Mom cries all the time. Dad's angry, but really he's just scared. They've been trying to figure out where you are, hotels, friends, places, even extended stays. It never occurred to them that you might be in a shelter. It never occurred to me either, I admitted softly. Emily, I'm so sorry. Her eyes filled with tears. I didn't realize how unbalanced things were between us. I never saw it. Why would you? You were the one they favored. That's not fair. I didn't ask for that, didn't you? All those times, you called them for money, for help, for support, and they gave it to you. All those times they bailed you out, while I had to handle everything on my own. Chloe lowered her gaze to her coffee. I never thought about it that way. I just assumed that's what parents are supposed to do, help when you need it. For you, maybe. Not for me. She swallowed hard. I see that now. And I feel awful, not just about what happened to you, but because I was part of the problem. I took their help for granted while you were struggling alone. Her sincerity caught me off guard. This wasn't the self-absorbed Chloe I was used to. This was someone facing an uncomfortable truth about herself and about our family. I've been looking for you every day, she continued, driving around the city, checking places you might go. I was so worried. Why? You've never worried about me before. She winced. I deserve that. But it's not entirely true. I've always admired you, Emily. You always seemed so capable, so put together. I thought you didn't need anyone, least of all me. The irony struck me. My strength, the very thing that made my parents neglect me, had also created distance between my sister and me. What happened with your car? She asked. You texted something about a flood. I told her about the thunderstorm, the flooded street, and losing most of my belongings. As I spoke, I realized it was the first time in years I had shared a real problem with my sister without hiding behind a brave face. That's awful, she said softly when I finished. What are you going to do now? Keep applying for jobs. Stay at the shelter until I can save enough for a place. Start over, I guess. Chloe took a deep breath. I have an idea, but promise you won't immediately say no. Come stay with me. What? You don't even have a place. You broke up with Mark. That's what started all of this. I do have a place. I never lived with Mark. Mom and Dad just assumed we moved in together, and I never corrected them. I've had my own apartment for 3 months. It's tiny, just the studio in Wicker Park, but the couch pulls out. You could stay until you're back on your feet. I stared at her, trying to process what she'd just revealed. You lied about living with Mark. Why? She looked embarrassed. Because I was ashamed. We dated for 8 months, but he never wanted to commit. When we broke up, it was easier to let Mom and Dad believe we'd been living together than admit the truth. She gave a small, self-deprecating laugh. I guess dishonesty runs in the family. I wasn't dishonest, I protested. I just didn't tell them everything. Neither did I, she said quietly. That's the thing, isn't it? We've both been acting out roles in this family. You the strong one, who never needs help. Me the fragile one, who always does. But neither of those is the whole truth. When Chloe offered me a place to stay, I hesitated. Her apartment would be a step up from the shelter, but it also meant opening myself up to someone I'd spent years competing with, someone I wasn't sure I could trust. I don't know, Chloe, we've never been close. We might kill each other in a small space. Probably, she admitted with surprising honesty. But it'd still be better than a shelter, wouldn't it? And maybe it's time we got to know each other as adults, not just as the roles we played as kids. Her words echoed the thoughts I'd been having myself. For so long, we had clung to the parts assigned to us in our family drama, neither of us truly seeing the other. Mom and Dad don't know about your apartment number, Chloe continued, and they don't need to know you're staying with me either. Not until you're ready to deal with them. The offer of space of time to breathe before facing my parents was tempting. But my pride rose up again, that old familiar enemy. Don't want charity, Chloe, not even from you. It's not charity, she said softly. It's family. She reached across the table, placing her hand on mine. Real family, not the version we grew up with. Let me help. Not because you need saving, but because I want to. Because that's what sisters are supposed to do. For the first time in years, I looked at her. Ellie, looked behind the flawless makeup and trendy clothes, was a woman trying to make amends, trying to build a bridge. Okay, I said at last. But I'll contribute as soon as I can. And this is temporary. Of course, she agreed quickly. Totally temporary. That afternoon, I packed up the few belongings I had left at the shelter, thanked Lily and Grace for their kindness, and followed Chloe to her apartment. It was smaller, converted loft with exposed brick and high ceilings, furnished with an eclectic mix of thrift store finds and a few expensive touches. The promised pull-out couch looked comfortable enough. Make yourself at home, Chloe said, pointing out the basics. Bathrooms through there. Kitchen's basically a counter with a microwave and mini fridge, but it does the job. As I unpacked, she busied herself making tea, nervously chattering about her job at the boutique, her photography hobby, and a documentary she'd just watched. It felt awkward, this new version of us, but also strangely refreshing. Without our parents watching, without the old roles weighing us down, we were beginning to find a new rhythm. That evening, over takeout, Thai food, Chloe surprised me again. "I have a friend at Digital Edge Marketing," she said casually. "They're hiring for campaign strategy. I told her about you. She said to send your resume directly." I nearly choked on my pad thai. "You did what?" Last week, when I was looking for you. I figured you'd need a job." Sarah, the creative director there, is always saying how hard it is to find people with real experience. I sent her your LinkedIn profile. "Hope that's okay." It was more than okay. Digital Edge was exactly the kind of company I'd been hoping to get into, innovated, respected, with a reputation for treating employees well. "Chloe, thank you. That's incredibly thoughtful." She smiled, not the tight, competitive smile I'd grown used to, but something genuine. "That's what sisters do, right? Look out for each other." As we ate, I began to see sides of Chloe I'd never noticed: her sharp humor, her keen eye for detail, her own frustrations with our parents' expectations. "They still treat me like I'm 16, she complained. "Dad tried to talk me out of renewing my lease because he thinks living alone is too much responsibility." "I'm 29, for God's sake. At least they care enough to worry," I said. "It's not worry, it's control. They don't trust me to make my own choices, so they try to make them for me. It's suffocating." In that moment, I realized something I hadn't before. The special treatment I had always resented came with a price. Chloe had been smothered, her independence stunted, while I had been pushed into adulthood too soon. Different wounds, but wounds all the same. The years of hurt weren't erased, but for the first time, I felt empathy for her. That night, lying on the pull-out couch, listening to her breathing across the room, I felt something I hadn't in weeks. Not just for a job or a roof over my head, but for a relationship with my sister that could become something real, something healing. The interview at Digital Edge went better than I'd dreamed. Sarah, Chloe's friend, turned out to be the creative director herself, and she seemed genuinely impressed by my work. 2 days later, I had an offer. The salary was a little less than my last job, but the benefits were stronger, including mental health coverage, something I desperately needed. Living with Chloe had its challenges. Her sleep schedule was chaotic, her housekeeping questionable, and she still borrowed my clothes without asking. But there were good moments: 2 late-night talks about our childhood, weekend movie marathons, and cooking lessons where I finally taught her the basics. Our mom never did. We found a rhythm. I took the early shower, made coffee, and was out the door by 7:30. Chloe, with her later shifts, rarely stirred before 9. Evenings became our time: simple meals, easy conversation, quiet companionship. Thought with my first paycheck, I insisted on helping with rent. With my second, I opened a savings account, determined never to be that vulnerable again. By the 3rd month, I had enough set aside to start looking for my own place, though. For once, I wasn't in a hurry. Meanwhile, our parents kept calling, texting, worrying. I gave them little, just that I was safe. Chloe, meanwhile, held firm to our secret, though it wore on her. "I hate lying to them," she admitted one night. "Mom cried today, convinced you're still on the streets. It feels wrong not to tell her you're here." "I am okay now," I told her, "but I wasn't for a long time, then never noticed. I'm not ready to pretend everything's fine just to ease their guilt." Still, as weeks turned to months, I could see the strain it put on Chloe. Caught between my silence and our parents' grief, at her urging, I finally began therapy, using my new insurance, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was moving forward. Dr. Reynolds specialized in family dynamics. She helped me process not only the trauma of becoming homeless, but also the deeper wounds I carried from childhood. She never pushed me to reconcile with my parents. Instead, she asked me to consider what kind of relationship I wanted with them moving forward. "Complete estrangement is an option," she told me once, "but it comes with its own cost. The question is whether that cost is worth the protection it gives." Her words stayed with me for days. What did I truly want from my parents? Not the blind loyalty and constant support they had always shown Chloe. That time was long gone. But maybe something more real. Something honest. a relationship built on who we truly were, not on the roles we had been trapped in for decades. 2 months after moving in with Chloe, nearly 5 months after that painful dinner, I decided it was time to face my parents. Chloe offered to come with me, but I knew this was something I had to do on my own. With the strengths I had slowly rebuilt, I suggested meeting at a restaurant, neutral ground, somewhere no one could storm out to another room or fall back into old patterns tied to the family home. I chose a small Italian place downtown, public enough to prevent a dramatic scene, but quiet enough for a serious conversation. When they arrived, they looked older than I remembered. My mother's face was thinner, with dark circles beneath carefully applied makeup. My father's once commanding posture was slightly stooped. They spotted me in the corner and rushed over. My mother almost embraced me, but stopped herself, unsure of how I'd react. "Emily," she said softly, her voice cracking, "you look well." "I am well," I replied, motioning for them to sit. "Thank you for coming." "Of course we came," my father said gruffly. "We've been worried sick. Where have you been staying?" "Chloe swears she doesn't know, but we thought I'm not here to be interrogated." I cut in firmly. "I'm here to talk about our relationship and what happens next." My mother blinked back tears. "We've been so worried, not knowing if you were safe." "I understand that," I said. "But I need you to understand why I needed space. Why I still do." "We understand," my father replied quickly. "You were going through a hard time, and we weren't sensitive enough. We should have seen something was wrong." It was exactly the kind of shallow answer I'd expected, skimming over the truth, avoiding the real problem. "This isn't just about the past few months," I said. "It's about a lifetime of imbalance in our family, about how you've treated Chloe and me differently since we were children." "That's not true," my mother protested instinctively. "It is true," I said, "and pretending otherwise won't help us move forward." I took a deep breath, grounding myself the way Dr. Reynolds had taught me. "I've prepared some things I need to say. I'd appreciate it if you'd just listen without interrupting." They exchanged a look but nodded. For as long as I can remember, there have been two sets of rules in our family. Chloe was fragile and needed protection. I was strong and could handle anything. These weren't roles we chose, they were assigned to us, and they shaped our lives. You gave Chloe financial help, you denied me. You poured emotional attention into her while I learned to process feelings alone. You celebrated her smallest achievements while mine were barely acknowledged. Because of that, Chloe never learned real independence, and I never learned how to ask for help. We were both hurt just in different ways. My father started to speak, but my mother placed a hand on his arm, silencing him. "When I lost my job and my apartment," I continued, "I was too ashamed to tell you. I knew, based on years of experience, that you'd respond with disappointment, not support. I believed I had failed at the one thing you expected of me, handling everything alone." I described the nights I spent sleeping in my car, the constant fear, the depression, the humiliation of finally accepting help from strangers because I couldn't bring myself to ask for it from my own family. "I'm not telling you this to make you feel guilty, though. I know you do. I'm telling you because if we're going to have any kind of relationship, it has to be built on truth, not the comfortable fictions we've lived with for years." By the time I finished, my mother was crying openly, and my father's eyes were wet. The silence that followed was filled only with the sounds of the restaurant around us. Finally, my father spoke, his voice rough. "I had no idea, none." He shook his head. "I thought we were doing right by both of you, giving Chloe the support she needed, respecting your independence because that's what I thought you wanted." "I didn't want independence," I said quietly. "I needed it, because you didn't give me another option." My mother reached across the table, stopping just short of touching my hand. "I keep thinking about what you said that night about your graduation, your awards, the moments we overlooked. You're right. We took you for granted. We expected more from you than from Chloe. I don't know why we fell into that pattern, but we did. And I'm so sorry." Her words felt genuine, but I'd heard apologies before, ones that faded into old habits. "I appreciate that, Mom," I said. "But what I need to know is whether anything will actually change, because I won't go back to the way things were." "What do you want from us?" my father asked directly. "Honesty, recognition of who I really am, not who you've decided I am, respect for my boundaries, and most importantly, a willingness to examine your own behavior, instead of getting defensive when I point out problems." My father nodded slowly. "Those seem reasonable." "They're not requests," I said firmly. "They're requirements if I'm going to have a relationship with you." My bluntness startled him, but after a pause, he nodded again. "Fair enough." My mother wiped her tears. "Where are you living now? Are you safe? Do you have a job?" It was predictable, her way of easing her own worry, but for the first time, I sensed real concern beneath the need for reassurance. "I'm safe. I have a good job. That's all I'm comfortable sharing right now." "But when will we see you again?" she pressed. "When can we talk more?" "I don't know yet," I answered honestly. "This conversation was a first step, not a resolution. I need time. And I need to see evidence that you're willing to change." My father, who had been unusually quiet, spoke again, this time with a vulnerability I had never heard before. "I thought I was being a good father by treating you like an adult, by not hovering, but I see now that I was just avoiding the harder parts of parenting." His voice cracked. "I failed you, Emily. Not just recently, but for years. I don't know if you can forgive me, but I hope someday you'll give me the chance to be the father you deserved." His words broke through my defenses. Tears stung my eyes, but I kept them from falling. "I'd like that, Dad, but it will take time." This time, when my mother reached for my hand, I let her hold it. "Whatever you need, however long it takes, we'll wait," she said. "We'll do better. Just, please don't disappear again." I didn't make promises, but I did agree to send them a text once a week, just to let them know I was okay, that it wasn't the tearful reunion I once imagined, but it was real. And for the first time in my relationship with my parents, honesty mattered more than harmony. As I left the restaurant that night, I felt different, not healed, not whole, but perhaps on the path to becoming someone new, someone authentic. I had faced my parents without giving in to their story or lashing out in anger. I spoke my truth, set my boundaries, and stepped out of the role of the perfect daughter. It was terrifying. It was liberating. It was just the beginning. 6 months later, I moved into my own apartment. It was smaller, in a less polished neighborhood, but it was mine, paid for with money I earned at my new job. Signing that lease gave me a deeper sense of accomplishment than any promotion or award ever had. Chloe helped me move in, lugging boxers and arranging furniture with surprising enthusiasm. Living as roommates had shifted our bond from distant rivals into genuine friendship. We still disagreed, still annoyed each other, but now we had a foundation of trust and understanding. "I'm going to miss having you around," she admitted as we collapsed onto my new couch after a long day of moving. "Who's going to make you clean the bathroom now?" I teased. She grinned. "See, that's what I'll miss, your tough love." We both knew my move wouldn't end our connection. We created a tradition, weekly sister nights. We'd alternate apartments, watch trashy reality TV, and dive into conversations about everything: work, stress, family memories, even childhood moments, viewed through adult eyes. My relationship with my parents was unfolding more slowly. Weekly texts turned into occasional phone calls, awkward at first but gradually more meaningful. My mother was beginning, in her own way, to see me as I was, not just as she had defined me. My father started asking about my work and, actually, listening. 2 months ago, I invited them to dinner at my new place, the first time we'd met face to face since that restaurant night. It was awkward, full of silences and tension, but also glimpses of something new. My father complimented my cooking without comparing it to Chloe's. My mother asked about my job without shifting the topic to family gossip. Small steps, but important ones. The biggest shift, though, was within me. Therapy helped me see the patterns I carried from childhood: the constant self-reliance, the fear of asking for help, the need to always prove myself. I was learning to be vulnerable, to set boundaries without guilt. Losing everything: my home, my identity built on me, to discover who I was without those external markers. That fall taught me resilience, but it also taught me the value of community. Once a month, I began volunteering at New Beginnings, bringing donations and helping women write resumes or prep for interviews. I sometimes saw Lily and Grace, still grateful for how they'd supported me in my darkest moment. Officer Mason and I even had coffee once, an unexpected friendship born from compassion on a rainy night. Slowly, the shame I'd carried about my homelessness transformed into something else: deep empathy for others in crisis, a recognition that life can turn suddenly for anyone, and a commitment to help build safety nets I once lacked at work. My new role at Digital Edge was both challenging and fulfilling. In 6 months, I'd been promoted twice, my creativity and experience valued in ways my old employer never recognized. The company encouraged balance, a concept I was still learning after years of overwork. Outside of work, I found community. In places I'd once overlooked: a book club, neighbors in my building, even reconnecting with old colleagues. My world, once so small and confined to career and family pressure, was expanding into something richer and more supportive. And my parents, I was learning to see them not as all-powerful figures, but as flawed people doing the best they knew how. Their best had caused real harm, yes, but understanding where it came from helped me let go of bitterness without excusing the pain. Rebuilding with them was messy steps forward and backward. My mother still slipped into old habits, comparing me to Chloe or dismissing my feelings. My father still struggled to express emotions, but they were trying. And so was I. Last Sunday, I hosted a family dinner, not out of duty, but because I wanted to. Chloe brought dessert. My parents brought a housewarming gift, a set of pots I'd mentioned needing. We ate, talked, even laughed. There were tense moments, echoes of old patterns, but also moments of genuine connection. As they left, my father hugged me and whispered, "I'm proud of you, Emily, not for what you do, but for who you are." It was the first time he had ever expressed pride without tying it to achievement. Just pride in me for existing, for being. It wasn't everything, but it was real. That night, sitting alone in my new home, I reflected on the journey, from perfect daughter to homeless, to someone carving her own path, from a family built on roles to relationships built on truth, from shame to self-acceptance, from isolation to connection. Healing wasn't finished, may never be, but I had found a way forward that honored the pain of the past, while embracing the possibility of the future. I learned that rock bottom can be a foundation if you build on it with care. I learned that families are not fixed, they break, they heal, they transform. They can be rebuilt on honesty instead of expectation. They can stretch toward light, like plants once kept in shadow. My name is Emily, and I am 33 years old. I am not the perfect daughter. I am not the capable one. I am not defined by strengths or failures. I am simply myself, complex, worthy, and enough. Have you ever had to rebuild a relationship with a family member? What helped you move forward? Share your story in the comments. And if this journey resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more stories of healing and transformation. Remember, asking for help is not weakness. It's one of the bravest things you can do. Thank you for listening. I hope my story brings comfort to anyone facing struggles with family expectations.